I remember that night like a scar that refuses to fade. The city pulsed beneath the glass walls of my office, neon bleeding through rain-slick windows, the hum of power vibrating in every breath I took. My men stood silent around the table, waiting for my word. I was built on control. Chaos bowed to me. And then, she fell. It happened mid-sentence. One moment she was setting down a tray of coffee, eyes lowered the way every employee should be around me. The next, the tray crashed to the marble floor, porcelain shattering into 1,000 tiny screams. She swayed once, twice, then her body gave out completely. For a heartbeat, no one moved. I should have told them to take her out, clean up the mess, carry on. That's what the old me would have done. But something about the way her fingers curled against the floor stopped me. She looked fragile, unreal. A ghost that had wandered into a room full of monsters. "Everyone leave," I said. My voice came out lower than I expected. The guards exchanged looks. They knew better than to argue. In seconds, the room emptied, leaving just the two of us and the echo of rain tapping on the windows. I crouched beside her. Her pulse was there, faint but steady. A few strands of hair had fallen across her face. I brushed them aside, and that's when I saw it. A small photograph slipping from her jacket pocket, landing just beside her hand. A baby, tiny, smiling, wrapped in a blue blanket. For some reason, my chest tightened. I picked up the photo carefully like it might burn me. There was something familiar about that face, though I couldn't place it. An ache that tugged at a memory buried too deep. Who was this girl? And why did she carry a baby's picture like a secret she couldn't let go? I looked at her again. She couldn't have been more than 25. Her uniform was crisp but worn, her hands marked with work and struggle. There was a bruise just beneath her collarbone, small, almost hidden. It didn't belong there. My instinct told me to walk away. Compassion is weakness. Weakness kills. That's the rule that's kept me alive in this empire of lies. But that night, something cracked open inside me. Something I didn't know still existed. I lifted her gently onto the couch. The baby photo trembled between my fingers. The resemblance. It was there. A faint echo of someone I once knew. Someone I'd buried with my past. My phone buzzed. A message from my second in command. "Meeting's waiting, boss." I stared at the screen, then at her. For the first time in years, business could wait. "Get me everything on her," I texted back. Name, address, past, everything. I slipped the baby photo into my pocket before I realized what I was doing. It felt wrong to leave it there with her. And yet it felt even worse to let it go. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. The city lights flickered, and in their reflection, I caught a glimpse of my own eyes. Tired. Colder than I remembered. I didn't know it then, but that single photograph was about to rewrite everything I believed in. Power, loyalty, even love. She didn't just faint in front of me. She collapsed at the exact moment my world started to fall apart. The night didn't end when the rain stopped. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Her face kept flashing in my head between files, numbers, and unfinished deals. The girl who fainted in my office, the girl with the baby photo. By sunrise, my men had already gathered everything they could find. I was standing at the window again, watching the city wake up under a bruised sky when Enzo, my right hand, walked in. "She's alive," he said, dropping a folder on my desk. "Name's Aria Vale. 26. Works part-time at one of our cafes. No record, no family listed. Lives alone. Aria Vale." The name fit like a whisper. I opened the folder. ID copies, rent slips, medical reports, nothing special at first glance. But then there was a hospital file, 3 years old, with a word circled in red. "Emergency ward, newborn." "Who's the baby?" I asked. Enzo shrugged. "There's no record, just that she was admitted with internal bleeding. The child was registered under a false name and disappeared." Something cold crawled up my spine. I looked down at the baby photo still lying on my desk. That same smile, those same eyes, too familiar. Too close to something I'd lost long ago. "Keep digging," I said quietly, "and don't tell anyone else." He hesitated. "Boss, you sure this is worth it? She's just a waitress." Then, it shouldn't be hard to find the truth. When he left, I poured a drink I didn't need. The whiskey burned, but not enough to drown the questions. Why did she have that photo? Why did my pulse race every time I looked at it? Later that afternoon, I went to see her myself. The clinic was small, tucked between glass towers and street vendors. I told the doctor my name. That was enough to clear the hallway. She was resting, pale, still weak. the band around her wrist marked with my company's logo. I stood at the doorway longer than I should have. She looked peaceful, unaware that her life was already under my microscope. There was a strange calm about her, the kind that doesn't belong in my world. When she stirred, I stepped inside. Her eyes opened slowly, confusion mixing with fear. "Where am I? You're safe," I said, keeping my tone even. "You fainted at work." She tried to sit up, but pain pulled her back. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." I cut her off gently. "What's this?" I held up the baby photo. Her breathing stopped. Every emotion she'd been hiding rushed to the surface: shock, guilt, and something like heartbreak. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "It fell from your pocket," I replied. "Who is he?" She looked away. Silence stretched between us, heavy enough to crush air. Finally, she said, "Please, give it back." I didn't. Instead, I slipped it back into my coat. "You'll tell me the truth, Arya, one way or another." When I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the glass wall. A man used to commanding fear, now caught in something he couldn't control. Outside, the city buzzed with life again, pretending innocence. Inside me, something restless had begun to stir, a need to know, to understand, to protect. I told myself it was curiosity, but deep down, I already knew it was the beginning of obsession. And in my world, obsession never ends well. Morning bled into glass and chrome. The city never truly sleeps, it only changes masks. From my office balcony, I could see the world move as if nothing had happened, yet everything inside me felt off balance. 3 days had passed since she fainted, 3 days since that photograph rewired my pulse. I had ordered the best doctors, round-the-clock guards, silence from the staff. No one asked why. No one ever asked the man who signs their paychecks. I told myself it was precaution. She'd collapsed in my building after all. But every night I found excuses to check the hospital feed on my phone, watching her breathing slow, then rise again, like watching proof that innocence still existed somewhere beneath the noise. On the 4th morning, the call came. "She's awake, sir." I was already halfway to the elevator before the words finished echoing. When I entered her room, sunlight was crawling through the blinds, painting lines across her face. She looked stronger, but the fear in her eyes returned the instant she saw me. I can't blame her. Men like me don't belong beside hospital beds. "You shouldn't move yet," I said, stepping closer. My voice came out lower than I meant, the kind you use to calm a frightened animal. She didn't answer. Her gaze drifted to the coat I carried. She remembered the photo. I could see the question waiting on her lips. I set the coat down. "You didn't tell me about the child." Her hands tightened on the blanket. "Because it's none of your business." I should have walked out right then. No one talks to me like that and breathes easy afterward. But instead I found myself amused, intrigued. She wasn't trembling anymore. There was strength behind that fear, the kind that refuses to break even when the world orders it to. "Everything under my roof is my business," I said softly, and that photo was under mine. She looked up. There was something behind her eyes, grief layered with defiance. "Then destroy it like you destroy everything else." The words hit harder than bullets. For a second I saw flashes of another woman, another voice saying the same thing years ago. I pushed the memory back where it belonged. "Tell me about the baby," I asked again, slower this time. She shook her head. "He's safe, that's all that matters." Safe. The word cracked inside my skull. In my world, safe is a fantasy. Everyone's someone's leverage. Everyone's a price waiting to be named. I stepped closer until the space between us tightened. "You don't understand what you're caught in, Arya. People who keep secrets from me don't stay safe for long." She looked right into me. "Then maybe you're the danger he needs protection from." Silence. Only the heart monitor dared speak. For a moment, I forgot who I was supposed to be. The man who built an empire on fear. Her voice stripped the armor clean off me. I turned away before she could see it. "I'll find the truth," I said quietly, "even if you hate me for it." "I already do," she whispered. I left before the weakness in my chest could take shape. The corridor outside smelled of antiseptic and guilt. Enzo waited at the end, holding his tablet. "You sure she's worth all this trouble, boss?" he asked. I glanced back at the door. Trouble's the only thing that still feels real. As we walked away, I caught my reflection in the polished floor, eyes darker, jaw tighter, a man stepping willingly into his own storm. She had woken up, yes. But so had something inside me. And I wasn't sure which of us would survive it. Night again. The city hums beneath me, a web of light and secrets. I've spent years reading fear on men's faces, coaxing truth from silence. Yet one woman's eyes keep defying every rule I built. Arya Vale, the girl who fainted, the girl with the photo. The girl who looks at me as if she sees what's left of my soul and doesn't like it. I should have ended this curiosity already. Curiosity becomes liability. Liability becomes death, but I couldn't. Not tonight. Tonight, I needed answers. The elevator whispered open, carrying me down to the basement suite I'd converted into an interrogation room. Clean, quiet, too elegant for what it's meant to do. She sat at the far end of the glass table, hands folded, a nurse's sweater wrapped around her shoulders. No cuffs, no guards, just me. That should have been scarier than chains. I leaned against the wall. You feeling better? She didn't answer. Her gaze followed the steam rising from the coffee cup in front of her. I asked a question, I said. She looked up finally. You don't care how I feel. You care what I know. Clever girl. I walked closer, slow enough for the sound of my shoes to fill the space. You're right. So tell me what I should know. I told you already, she said, voice trembling but firm. The baby's safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll get. I smiled, just enough to unsettle her. You really think silence protects you? I could make a phone call and your entire past disappears in smoke. She flinched, then steadied herself. Do it. Erase me. It won't erase what you did. The words hit harder than she realized. What I did. There was accusation in her tone, not guesswork, memory. How could she possibly know? I circled the table, stopping behind her. The scent of antiseptic had been replaced by something softer. Jasmine and fear. You talk like you've known me a long time, Arya. Maybe I've known men like you, she said. No, I murmured. There are no men like me. She turned slightly, enough for our eyes to meet. Then maybe that's the problem. For a second, neither of us breathed. The tension wasn't violence anymore. It was something rawer, unspoken. I hated that she could twist the air like this. I hated that I let her. I placed the photograph on the table between us. Look at him. The child. Tell me who he is. Her fingers brushed the edge of the photo, trembling. If I tell you, he'll never be safe again. Safe from who? I pressed. From you. Silence stretched like wire. The truth sat inches away, and still she hid it behind courage. I could order Enzo to break her spirit in minutes, but I didn't. Instead, I found myself whispering, I've lost things I can't replace. Don't make me lose this truth too. Her eyes softened for the briefest heartbeat, then hardened again. Some truths aren't meant for men like you. I stepped back, anger and confusion tangling. She wasn't afraid of death. She was afraid of me knowing. That meant whatever secret she carried was tied to me more deeply than I dared imagine. I turned toward the door. You'll stay here until you decide to talk. As I reached for the handle, her voice cut through the room. He has your eyes. My hand froze. The words echoed inside the glass walls like a detonator click. I looked back slowly. She sat perfectly still, staring at the floor, tears sliding soundlessly down her face. What did you just say? I asked, but she said nothing more. When I finally left the room, the city outside seemed quieter than usual, as if it too was holding its breath. That night I didn't drink. I didn't sleep. I just stared at that photo again, searching for the reflection she claimed was mine, and for the first time in years, I was afraid of what the truth might look like. Morning came without color, just a gray sky and the taste of sleeplessness. I sat in my office, the blinds half drawn, the baby photo spread across the desk beside a dozen open files. Her last words kept circling my head like smoke. He has your eyes. I'd heard lies before. I built an empire on them. But that sentence carried something heavier, truth wrapped in pain. Enzo entered quietly, coffee in one hand, a folder in the other. Background update, he said. You might want to see this. I opened the folder. More hospital documents. Employment records. Fragments of a life stitched together by fear. Arya Vale had moved 6 times in 4 years, changed her last name twice, paid rent in cash. She'd been hiding from someone. At the back of the file was a faded photo, 2 women standing outside an old orphanage. One of them was Arya, younger, thinner. The other woman froze my pulse. Elena. My Elena. The name burned in my throat. Years ago, she was the only person who ever saw past the power and the blood on my hands. And I destroyed her without meaning to. When I learned she'd died in a clinic fire, I buried whatever heart I had left. Now her face stared back at me from the edge of Arya's past. Where did you find this? I asked. Public archive, Enzo said. Looks like Arya worked for the same orphanage Elena funded before she disappeared. There's more. Financial ties. Old donations under false companies. She's been off-grid since the fire. I closed the file slowly. Get me everything about that orphanage. Records, survivors, anything. Enzo studied me for a beat. Boss, if she's connected to Elena, this isn't business anymore. He was right. And that terrified me. After he left, I poured another drink but didn't touch it. The glass reflected the city lights, fractured into 1,000 pieces, just like my memories. I remembered the night of the fire, smoke curling through the sky, sirens drowning the sound of her name, my men dragging me away before I could reach her. I never looked back. Looking back meant breaking, but the photo on my desk forced me to. Later that evening, I went down to see Arya again. She was sitting by the window of her guarded room, knees drawn up, eyes lost somewhere beyond the city glow. For a second she looked so much like Elena that I couldn't breathe. "You knew her," I said quietly. She turned her head. "I knew a lot of people. Elena, the woman from the orphanage." Her lips parted, shock flickering before she could hide it. "How do you—" I remember that face. "Don't lie to me." She looked down, whispering. "She saved me when no one else would. And now she's gone." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You killed her, didn't you?" I didn't answer. Silence is sometimes the loudest confession. Arya stood, trembling but brave. "That child in the photo. She promised to protect him. When she died, I took her place. I ran because you would have found him. Why would I hurt a child?" I asked, though the question felt hollow. "Because you hurt everything you touch." Her words sliced through me cleaner than any blade. I took a step closer, but she backed away, hugging herself like armor. "You think I wanted that fire?" I said. "You think I wanted her gone?" "Want has nothing to do with what you do," she whispered. The room fell silent again, except for the rain starting to tap on the glass. I stared at her, the weight of old sins pressing harder than ever. The baby, the photo, Elena, it was all the same wound bleeding through time. When I finally left, the hallway felt longer, colder. Enzo waited near the elevator, but I waved him off. Some ghosts have to be faced alone. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection once more. Eyes darker than night, haunted by a truth I couldn't yet name. The past wasn't done with me. And neither was she. Control used to be simple. You give an order, the world obeys. You raise a brow, fear does the rest. But that night, control felt like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. Rain whispered across the windows of my penthouse, blurring the city into streaks of silver. I stood there, tie loosened, the baby photo balanced between my fingers like proof of a life that shouldn't exist. The face on that picture had already started to haunt me. Small, innocent, smiling the way no one in my world ever smiles. I told myself I was only thinking of logistics, security risks, information leaks, leverage, lies. What I was really doing was remembering Elena's laugh and wondering if the child in that photo had her kindness or my curse. Enzo came in quietly. "We traced a few orphanage files. Some transfers were funded from your old offshore accounts." "My accounts?" "Someone used your name, or someone close to you did." He left the papers on the table. I didn't need to read them. I knew whose hands once handled those accounts. Elena's. She'd used my money to protect the children I couldn't even protect her from. "Anything else?" I asked. "She's asking to see you," Enzo said. "Arya says she'll talk." The glass in my hand stilled. "Now?" He nodded. "Looks like she's ready." Ready. No one's ever ready to face the devil, but maybe she was tired of running. I put the photo into my coat pocket and headed downstairs. The room smelled of antiseptic and storm air. Arya sat near the edge of the couch, arms folded around herself. For once, the fear in her eyes wasn't for her own life. It was for something bigger. "I'll answer your questions," she said before I could speak. "But you have to promise me something." "Promises from me are expensive," I replied. "Then pay attention instead of money," she said. "Don't send your men after him. Don't try to find him." The child again. "Always the child. I can't agree to that without knowing why." Her breath trembled. "Because if you find him, he'll never be free." I moved closer, slow enough not to spook her. "You really think freedom exists for anyone touched by my world?" She met my gaze unflinching. "Maybe not for you, but for him it has to." Something shifted inside my chest, an ache that felt too human. I wanted to tell her she didn't understand how this world works, that purity doesn't survive here. But the words died before they reached my mouth. Instead, I said quietly, "You sound like her." Her brow furrowed. "Like who?" "Elena." Her lips parted, surprise flickering across her face. "You still remember her? Remember?" I laughed, low and bitter. "I never forgot. Some sins don't let you." For a moment, we just looked at each other, two ghosts keeping the same heartbeat. Then she said, almost a whisper, "She believed there was good left in you." She was wrong. "Maybe," she said softly, "but I think that's why she stayed." Her words cracked something I'd been patching for years. I turned away before she could see it, pressing a hand against the window frame. Outside, lightning sliced the sky. For a split second, the world glowed white, then fell back into darkness. "You should rest," I said. "We'll talk again tomorrow." As I reached the door, she spoke one last time. "The child, he's not your punishment. He's your chance." I didn't answer. I just left, her voice trailing me down the hallway like a heartbeat I couldn't silence. Back in my office, I poured another drink and didn't touch it. The city kept breathing beneath me, unaware that its king was crumbling. I could feel the first crack running through the armor, small but real, whispering of everything I'd spent years burying. The storm outside grew louder, matching the one I'd just let inside, and I knew this was how it starts. Not with a gunshot, with a whisper that refuses to die. Sleep became a stranger. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the tremor in her voice, the echo of that single word, chance. It looped like a prayer I didn't believe in. The next few days blurred into routine, meetings, contracts, the constant noise of an empire demanding to be fed. But underneath it all, my thoughts kept circling back to her. Arya Vale, the woman who had looked at me and seen both her monster and her salvation. I told myself I was simply being cautious. She was a mystery, possibly a threat. But the truth was darker. I was addicted to the mystery itself. From my office, I started watching her on the internal feeds. She never did much. Read quietly, stared out the window, sometimes cried when she thought no one was watching. Yet every movement felt magnetic, the kind of pull no bullet can stop. One night, Enzo walked in mid-observation. "Boss," he said carefully, "if you keep watching her like that, someone's going to start asking why." I didn't look away from the screen. "Then tell them the truth. She interests me," he snorted. "Interest? That's not what this looks like." I turned my head slightly, and the warning in my eyes shut him up. But the silence afterward only made me hate myself more. Enzo was right. I wasn't analyzing anymore. I was searching. For what? I didn't know. When she finally asked to see me again, I agreed faster than I should have. The meeting was quiet, private, no guards this time. Just the two of us and the weight of what neither of us dared to say. She looked stronger now, the hospital pallor fading, but her eyes still held that storm. "Why are you keeping me here?" she asked. "Protection," I said, "or captivity. Depends on whether you plan to run again," she sighed. "You can't control everything." "I can try." I expected her to argue, but instead she smiled faintly, a sad, knowing curve. "You sound like someone who's afraid of losing control." I leaned forward. "You think I'm afraid?" "I think you're human," she said softly. The words hit harder than any accusation. In my world, humanity is a weakness, a liability. Yet when she said it, it almost felt like forgiveness. I asked her about the boy again. She shook her head, refusing. But this time her eyes softened, and I saw something there. Hope, maybe trust. A dangerous thing. When I left the room, I ordered Enzo quietly. "Find where she lived before she came here." Discreetly. He hesitated. "You sure that's wise? She told you not to. Just do it." He left without another word, but the guilt settled heavier in my chest. I was breaking my own word, crossing lines even I once respected. Yet I couldn't stop. I needed to know who she was, who the child was, why fate decided to stitch her life to mine. That night, the city glowed like a wound, neon veins pulsing through the rain. I stood by the window again, glass in hand, watching my reflection blur against the skyline. For years, power was my only language. Now one woman had rewritten it with silence. I hated her for it, and I couldn't look away. When the phone buzzed, Enzo's voice came through the static. "We found something, boss. You're going to want to see this." "What is it?" "Her last address, and a school record." "The boy's name?" The room tilted slightly. "Say it." There was a pause. "Luca. Luca Moretti. My name." The glass slipped from my hand, shattering across the marble floor. In the reflection of 1,000 broken pieces, I saw my own face, cold, stunned, unraveling. The child wasn't just a secret. He was mine, Luca Moretti. The name kept echoing long after the call ended. My name, dragged through blood, whispered through power, carved into fear, now belonged to a child I'd never met. I stood frozen in the middle of my office, the rain outside sounding like static. My pulse didn't quicken. It just stopped, as if the world itself held its breath. "Boss?" Enzo's voice came again, hesitant. "You want me to verify?" "No," my throat was dry. "Bring me everything you have. Now." Minutes later, the folder landed on my desk. Birth certificate, adoption records, blurred photographs. And there, in ink I couldn't look away from, father, unknown. Mother, Elena Vale, Elena, not Arya. The paper trembled in my hand. She'd hidden his existence, protected him. From me, I should have been angry. I should have felt betrayed. But all I felt was the weight of her ghost pressing against my ribs. Elena had died to save that boy. My son, and Arya. She'd carried the secret like a weapon and a wound all at once. Enzo spoke again, carefully. "You think she knew?" "She knows," I said. "She's been protecting him this whole time." He exhaled low. "Then what now?" I didn't answer. I just stared out at the city. My empire glittered like a lie built on glass. And now every piece threatened to cut me open. Later that night, I went to her room. No guards, no shadow of command. Just me and the truth clawing at my chest. She was sitting by the window again, bathed in the soft glow of the skyline. When she saw me, she didn't flinch. Maybe she'd expected this. "You found out," she said quietly. I nodded once. "His name, his mother, and mine." She looked down, hands trembling in her lap. "I didn't want it to be like this." "Then how?" I stepped closer. How do you hide my own blood from me and call it mercy? Her voice cracked. Because I knew what you'd do if you found him. You'd drag him into this, into you. And that boy deserves a life that isn't paid for with blood. He's my son, I said, the words tasting foreign, dangerous. You don't get to decide what he deserves. I already did, she said, the night Elena died. Her eyes lifted to mine, glistening. She begged me. Her last words were your name and his. She said, don't let him find out. So I ran. I kept him safe, the only way I could. Silence swallowed the room. Every sound, the rain, the heartbeat, the city, seemed to fade. I could see it now. Elena's face in the firelight, her voice cracking through the smoke. And Arya, younger, terrified, clutching the baby that carried my blood. The realization tore something open inside me that no bullet ever had. I turned away, gripping the back of a chair to stay upright. You think I'd hurt him? I whispered. Her answer was a whisper too. I think you'd make him you. That one line burned deeper than any wound. For years, I'd convinced myself that power was protection, that fear was the only shield in a world like mine. But now, for the first time, I saw what I'd really built. A kingdom of ghosts, a legacy of monsters. And somewhere out there, a child with my name was breathing freely because she had dared to defy me. I looked back at Arya. Her eyes were red, but steady. If you ever find him, she said, promise me you'll let him stay free. I didn't answer, couldn't. Because promises are things men like me were never made to keep. When I finally left, I didn't go back to my office. I went to the rooftop. The rain hit my face like punishment, and for the first time in years, I let it. I had a son, and the woman I'd once loved had died protecting him from me. Power had never felt so small. Power is supposed to make you untouchable. That's what they all believe, that fear keeps the world in line, but they don't see the cracks beneath the surface. They don't hear the silence that comes after the shouting stops. They don't know what it's like to be haunted by the one thing you can't buy back, time. Since that night, everything I touched felt wrong. The meetings, the money, the men who bowed when I entered. All of it empty noise. Because somewhere out there, a boy was growing up without a father. My son, Elena's son, and Arya. She'd been right to run, because if I'd found her then, years ago, I would have turned the boy into a weapon without even realizing it. Now I couldn't decide if I wanted to find him, or keep him hidden forever. Enzo came into my office that morning with the usual confidence, but his tone carried hesitation. Boss, the men are talking. They've noticed the silence. You've canceled 3 shipments. We lost a deal in Prague because you didn't call back. Let it burn, I said. He frowned. That's not like you. I looked up from the desk, eyes cold. Then maybe I'm not like me anymore. He hesitated. Is this about her, or the kid? My jaw clenched. You ever ask that again, Enzo, and you'll be the next thing I bury. He nodded slowly. Understood. When he left, I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. The empire I'd built was slipping, and for once I wasn't fighting to stop it. I'd spent years ruling through fear. Now fear was all I felt myself. That evening, I found myself walking toward her room again. No purpose, no plan, just a gravity I couldn't ignore. Arya was reading when I entered. Her posture stiffened, but she didn't look surprised. You don't knock anymore, she said. Didn't think I needed to, I replied. She closed the book. You shouldn't be here, neither should you. Her eyes lifted to mine, tired but unbroken. Then why do you keep coming back? I didn't answer. I just stood there, watching the light from the lamp trace across her face. She looked softer than she should, considering the dangers surrounding her. And somehow that softness was the sharpest blade I'd ever faced. You changed something in me, I said finally. And I hate you for it. Her breath hitched. You think I wanted to? You think I asked for it? I took a step closer. I spent years making sure nothing touched me. No one got close. And then you show up, fainting in my office with a photo that rewrote my whole goddamn life. Her eyes glistened. Then maybe it's time to stop running from it. The silence between us tightened. I could hear her heartbeat from across the room. Or maybe it was mine. I moved closer, until I could see the reflection of the city lights in her pupils. My voice dropped lower. If I go looking for him, you'll hate me for it. If you don't, she whispered, you'll hate yourself. And that was it. The moment it all cracked open. My control, my composure, the thin thread holding me together snapped. I turned away before I did something I couldn't undo, before I kissed the woman who'd been brave enough to hate me and still stay standing. Back in my office, the storm inside me finally broke. I swept the files from my desk. Glass shattered, papers tore, echoes filled the room. I let it happen. I let the anger consume me because it was easier than admitting the truth. I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at myself, for still loving ghosts, for still chasing bloodlines, for still wanting to be forgiven. I stood there in the chaos, breathing hard, until one thought rose above the noise. If the world ever came for that boy, I'd burn it to ash before letting anyone touch him, and maybe that's what scared me the most. Because that's exactly what Elena had tried to save him from. The Empire always listens. Walls have ears and men have mouths. Secrets don't die in my world, they sprout legs and run. I felt it before I saw it. A pull at the seams, a whisper slipping through the cracks. Someone in my house had a tongue loose enough to speak Luca's name. I called the meeting for midnight. The room smelled like stale cigars and fear. Men I'd trusted for years filed in, faces carved from the same granite as the city. They stood waiting for commands, for a plan, for the iron certainty I used to hand them like a currency. Tonight, I had nothing that looked like certainty left. Enzo was there, of course, steady, faithful, the kind of man who would drown if I asked him to and then apologize for the inconvenience. Across from him sat Marco, my logistics chief, the man who moved goods and people like a silent orchestra. He kept avoiding my eyes. "Someone's talking," I said, my voice low enough to make the room lean in. Someone said my son's name. Silence folded over the table like a curtain. I watched them one by one, the way a surgeon watches a heart monitor searching for a rhythm. Marco's mouth thinned. "We've had rumors, boss. The city's full of them. Gossips. Not worth—" "Gossips name the wrong things and people die," I interrupted. "Who said Luca Moretti?" No one answered. It's funny how loyalty looks brave until you ask it to stand where fear breathes. Enzo met my eyes. "We checked, boss. No trace from anyone inside the company. Could be an outsider. Outsiders don't whisper in my men's ears," I said. "Someone's positioning. Someone's testing the water to see if I'll react." The room stiffened. I let the silence hang until it hurt. Then I said the thing I always used to fear saying aloud. "I want full audits. Phones, loyalty checks, recent hires. Every man who's been near Elena's case ordered to the basement. They moved like a well-oiled machine, duty without question. But I saw the calculation in their faces, the cost. The men who'd lived by my rules now had to police their own." After the meeting, I walked the corridors of the compound alone, lights cutting the dark into rigid sections. I'd built walls to keep enemies out, never imagining I'd have to tear through the people inside to find the rot. The thought made bile rise in my throat. Back in my office, Enzo sat across from me, his hands folded as though offering them up. "There's something else," he said. "A courier from Prague showed unusual interest in Arya's old district. He was asking questions about a child and a woman who left the orphanage." My world narrowed to the pulse in my temple. "Trace him. Watch the courier. Tap his contacts." He nodded, but his eyes held something I hadn't seen before. Concern, yes, but also fear for me. For what I might do when the truth cracked the surface. I wasn't the same man who could call a name and set a city on fire without a second thought. I stood on the edge of something that wasn't violence, it was consequence. I'd broken laws of men and hearts for years, and now my past had conspired to return in the shape of a child with my blood. That night, I went to Arya's room unannounced. She was sitting on the bed, hands folded in her lap, as if she could fold worry into something small enough to hide. When she saw me, she didn't flinch. "They asked you to keep it quiet," I said. She looked down. "I kept him safe." "Someone's stirring the water," I said. "If you brought trouble to him, I will—" "You'll what?" she snapped, eyes finally flashing. "Take him and teach him how to kill?" Her words struck like a thrown knife. For a second, I saw the child not as a pawn, but as a boy who might one day ask why his father was a god of ruin. I felt the animal inside me snap. Not to kill, but to shield. "You don't know what I am capable of," I said, softer than I intended, "and you don't know what you're capable of either," she returned. "You could save him, or you could destroy him." The choice sat between us like a detonator. I'd always thought my decisions had been carved in stone. Now they were mud. Soft, shifting, impossible to trust. Outside, the city slept on, unaware of the storm gathering just beneath its skin. Inside my chest, another storm raged, less about territory and more about what kind of man I wanted to be when the dust finally settled. For the first time, the thing I feared most wasn't war with rivals or betrayal by men. It was the person I might become when I finally met my son. And that uncertainty was worse than any vendetta. The next morning arrived too early, dragging sunlight through the glass like an interrogation lamp. The city looked the same, expensive, fast, heartless, but something inside me had shifted overnight. I wasn't the man who built this world anymore. I was the man watching it rot in his own hands. Every report Enzo brought me felt colder, more deliberate. The courier vanished. A leak in the docks. Men whispering my son's name in corners. Each update was a thread unraveling from the suit I'd spent years stitching tight. And beneath it all, Arya, the woman who should have been my enemy, yet somehow became the only truth I couldn't bury. That evening, I went to see her again. No guards, no reason. Just instinct. She was sitting by the piano in the guest room, her fingers tracing dust across the keys, not playing, just remembering what sound used to feel like. I stood in the doorway, unseen for a moment. She looked softer under the light, like someone who belonged in a quieter world. A world I could never give her. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked without turning. "Rarely," I said. She smiled faintly. "Because of me? Because of what you've made me remember." She looked up then, and something in her eyes changed. Not anger this time, not defiance. Pity, and that, somehow, hurt worse. "You think you can protect him by controlling everyone," she said. "But that's the same lie that destroyed Elena." I stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "You don't get to say her name." "She loved you," Arya said softly. "But love isn't obedience. It's mercy. And mercy's the one thing you've never learned." Her words struck deeper than bullets. I'd built an empire on punishment, on teaching men that mercy was weakness. But standing there, inches from her, I realized mercy was the only thing I wanted from her, even if I'd never earned it. "You're brave," I said finally. "No one else would talk to me like that and still be breathing. Then maybe you're not as heartless as they say." She rose from the piano bench, her steps light, cautious. When she stopped in front of me, the air between us turned electric. I could smell her perfume, faint, warm, human, the kind of scent that made the rest of the world irrelevant. "You should hate me," I whispered. "I've tried," she said. "But hate is easy. You don't make things easy." Her voice trembled on that last word, and that was it, the soft crack between control and surrender. I reached out, fingertips brushing her jaw, slow enough to let her step away. She didn't. For one suspended second, the world stopped moving. No city, no empire, no ghosts, just two broken people trapped in the same heartbeat. But then reality came crashing back. Enzo's voice over the intercom. "Boss, we've got a problem." The spell shattered. I pulled back, the mask slipping into place as easily as a weapon. "What is it?" I asked, voice back to steel. "There's movement near the compound. Someone's tailing our cars. Looks organized." My chest tightened. "Keep her inside. Double the guards. I'll handle it." Arya looked at me, fear flickering beneath the calm. "Is it about him?" she asked. "It's always about him," I said. "And now, they're too close." By the time I reached the control room, the cameras showed two black sedans parked near the lower gate, tinted windows, no plates. Professional. I'd seen this pattern before. They weren't here to talk. They were here to send a message. And in my world, messages are written in blood. I gave the order, my voice colder than the storm rising outside. "No mercy. I want them gone." As my men moved, I glanced at the feed of Arya on the screen, still standing by the piano, staring toward the window as if she knew something terrible had just begun. That night, the city trembled, engines roared, gunfire cracked through the rain, and while the world burned outside my walls, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't fighting for my empire anymore. I was fighting for her, and that was how monsters fall. The storm didn't wait for midnight. It came early. Thunder crawling down the skyline, lightning flashing off wet glass, and the city below glowing like it was holding its breath. I stood in the control room watching the feed. 2 sedans had turned into 4. Whoever they were, they knew how to move, synchronized, quiet, confident. Not amateurs, not police, professionals. Gate 1 breached. Enzo's voice snapped through the intercom. "They're inside the perimeter." The sound of gunfire echoed seconds later. Sharp, distant, too close. My chest tightened. I grabbed my coat and the pistol from the drawer. This wasn't a message anymore. This was war. "Where's Arya?" I demanded. "Still in the West Wing," Enzo replied. 2 guards with her." "Not enough," I growled. "Lock down the east exits. I'm going to her." The halls shook with noise. The lights flickered, glass breaking somewhere ahead. The metallic scent of gun oil and smoke filled the air. Every step I took felt like walking through the past, like the night Elena died all over again. History doesn't repeat itself by accident. It repeats because you don't listen the first time. When I reached the west corridor, one of my men lay bleeding by the door, his eyes still open, his radio crushed. I stepped over him, heart hammering. Inside, Arya stood by the window, pale, terrified, but not screaming. She'd learned silence well. "Stay behind me," I said. "What's happening?" she whispered. "Someone found us." "Found him?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just raised my gun toward the door. The next moment, the glass exploded inward, a burst of smoke and fire. I pulled Arya down, shielding her with my body as bullets tore through the air. My ears rang. My mind sharpened into the cold clarity I hadn't felt in years. I fired back. 2 shots. 1 man down. Another shadow moved across the doorway. I hit him before he could raise his weapon. Then silence. Heavy, electric, the kind that means it's not over yet. Arya's hands clutched my coat. "They're going to kill you," she said. "Not tonight." I helped her up, scanning the smoke-filled room. We need to move. There's nowhere to go. There's always somewhere. I took her hand and pulled her toward the side corridor, a narrow path leading down to the safe elevator. Every corner could have been the last one, every shadow a gun. My men were fighting somewhere below, shouting, engines revving, chaos rising like a heartbeat. When we reached the elevator, I hit the emergency code. It didn't respond. Jam signal. They'd thought of everything. Plan B, I said, pulling her toward the stairwell. We ran, fast, silent, every footstep echoing like time running out. Halfway down, an explosion shook the lower floors. The building groaned, dust and heat filling the stairwell. Arya stumbled. I caught her before she fell. "This is because of me," she said through the smoke. "This is because of us," I said. "And I'll end it." She looked up at me then, eyes wet, desperate. "You can't save both worlds, Moretti. Choose one." Her words cut through everything. The gunfire, the smoke, the guilt. And I realized what she meant, her or the child. When we burst through the side exit, a black SUV screeched in front of us, Enzo at the wheel. "Get in!" he shouted. We dove inside just as another explosion ripped through the compound. The shockwave lifted dust and flame into the night sky. Arya's scream caught in her throat. She turned to look out the window, watching the only safe place she'd known burn to the ground. I held her close as Enzo sped through the rain-slick streets. The rearview mirror showed the compound collapsing behind us, an empire reduced to smoke. My world was burning, but for once, I didn't care, because she was alive in my arms. And that terrified me more than anything. The rain hadn't stopped by dawn. It washed the city clean, or at least tried to. But blood doesn't wash out easily. Not from your skin, not from your soul. We drove for hours until the skyline disappeared behind the fog. Enzo led us through back roads, dirt paths, into the kind of silence that feels older than forgiveness. The safe house was small, an abandoned villa I'd bought years ago under someone else's name. No cameras, no guards, no ghosts, just quiet. When we stepped inside, Arya looked around, the cracked walls, the dust-coated piano in the corner, the faint smell of cedar and rain. "It's beautiful," she said softly. I almost laughed. It wasn't. But maybe beauty isn't about perfection. Maybe it's about peace after too much noise. Enzo stayed by the window, scanning the forest line. "We're clear for now," he said. But whoever hit the compound, they knew everything. Layout, codes, response times. "We've got a traitor." I nodded slowly. "Find out who." Quietly. He glanced at Arya before leaving the room, closing the door behind him. And then it was just us. For the first time, there was no chaos between us. Just the silence of two people who'd seen too much of each other's pain. "You're bleeding," she said suddenly, noticing the graze across my ribs. "It's nothing," I muttered. She moved closer anyway, eyes locked on mine like she was challenging my lie. Her hands trembled as she reached for a cloth from the table, pressing it against the wound. Her touch burned in the best way. "You shouldn't have stayed," I said. "And let you die alone?" she whispered. "You don't understand what it costs to protect me." Her voice broke a little. "Then teach me." For a moment I forgot who I was supposed to be. The man who commands, who destroys, who doesn't feel. But she looked at me like I was still human somewhere beneath the ruin. The world outside could be burning, and I wouldn't have noticed. Because she was standing inches away, her breath shaking, eyes bright with something I'd sworn I'd never see again. Faith. "You risked everything," I said. "For a man who doesn't deserve it." "I didn't do it for you," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I did it for the part of you that still remembers love." That word, love, hit like a blade under the ribs. In my world, love is the first thing you learn to bury. It's the weakness that gets men killed. But here, in this cracked and lonely villa, it was the only thing keeping me breathing. I turned away, pacing. "You shouldn't say things like that. Not to me." "Because you'll use it against me?" she asked. "No," I said, turning back. "Because I might believe it." She took a step closer, then another, until she was standing so near I could feel her heartbeat through the air between us. Her fingers brushed my jaw, soft, uncertain. "Then believe it," she said. "For once in your life, stop fighting the thing that could save you." I didn't think, I didn't plan. For a man who controls everything, I finally surrendered. To her, to the moment, to the truth I'd denied for too long. I kissed her. Not like a lover, like a drowning man reaching for the last breath that could keep him alive. When we finally pulled apart, her eyes glistened with something fierce and fragile all at once. "I don't know what happens next," she said. Neither do I admitted. But I know one thing. What? Anyone who touches you now, they die. She looked at me for a long moment. Then quietly she said, then maybe it's time you learned to kill for the right reason. Outside, thunder rolled again. Distant. Promising. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, I wasn't fighting alone. The fire had died down to embers. Rain whispered against the windows like the city was still trying to find us. The villa was quiet, too quiet. Even Enzo had drifted off in the other room, leaving me and Arya alone by the dying flames. She sat wrapped in a blanket, her eyes distant, lost somewhere between guilt and memory. I'd seen that look before, years ago. On Elena, the look of someone about to tell the truth, knowing it would destroy everything. Say it, I said softly. She didn't move. You've been holding something back since the day I found you. The photo, the boy. You knew more than you let on. Still silence. Then, finally, her voice broke through the dark. You think the boy is your son? I stared at her, the air between us turning colder. Isn't he? She looked up, her eyes glimmering like wet glass. Yes, and no. Those two words shouldn't coexist. But in her voice they did. What the hell does that mean, Arya? It means, she whispered, he's yours by blood, but not by birth. The room tilted for a second. I felt the ground slip, the world I built bending under a truth I didn't understand. She took a deep breath, fingers clutching the blanket tighter. Elena couldn't have children. She tried for years. She hid it from you because she knew what that kind of weakness meant in your world. I said nothing. I just listened, every muscle locked in place. She wanted to give you a son, to give you something that would make you stay. So when my sister died giving birth, she took the child, paid off the hospital, erased the records, and claimed him as her own. My throat went dry. Your sister? Her eyes lifted to mine. Luca's real mother, my sister. That makes me his aunt. The words hit like gunfire in slow motion. Every image I had of that night, of the baby photo, of Arya's face when she fainted, all of it started rearranging into something that made too much sense. Elena lied to me, I said finally. She didn't do it to hurt you, Arya said quickly. She did it because she thought that child would save you. Save what was left of you, I laughed, low, hollow. Save me? She buried me. Every lie she told built the coffin I'm living in. Arya looked down, tears falling soundlessly. She told me to stay away from you after she died. But when I saw what kind of life Luca might have, I couldn't. I had to make sure you'd protect him, even if it meant lying to you too. I stood there, staring at her, at the woman who had risked her life, lied to my face, and somehow made me love her anyway. You used me, I said. I saved you, she replied. You just don't see it yet. The fire cracked between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said quietly, why tell me now? Because the men who attacked the compound, they weren't after your empire, she said. They were after him. Someone found out about Luca's real lineage. They think he's leverage, the bloodline to both your family and mine. I froze. Your family? Her eyes darkened. You're not the only one who built an empire in the dark, Moretti. My father was your enemy long before I was your lover. And just like that, the world broke open again. Every instinct, every scar, every ghost, all came roaring back. The woman I'd saved was the daughter of the man I'd destroyed. You should have killed me the day we met, she whispered. I stepped closer, my voice low, trembling with fury and something deeper. I tried, I said, every day since then. We stood there, two people made of the same fire, finally realizing the truth. We weren't lovers. We were the aftermath of war disguised as love. By dawn, the truth had already begun to bleed. It started in whispers. Men talk, walls listen. And somewhere between those two, secrets start to rot. Enzo brought the first report, quiet, hesitant. Half the docks are empty. We've lost contact with 3 crews. I didn't need to ask why. They were defecting. My empire wasn't bleeding from the outside anymore. It was hemorrhaging from within. I poured myself a drink, though it tasted more like ash than whiskey. They're scared, Enzo continued. They heard about the girl, about her father. I looked out the window at the rain-soaked hills, my reflection barely human in the glass. Fear is loyalty with a pulse, I said. It just needs a direction. He hesitated. And if that direction points at you? I turned slowly. Then I remind them who built their kingdom. Arya was by the fireplace again, her eyes hollow, her body wrapped in silence. Since her confession, every glance between us felt like standing on a cliff with no ground left to trust. She looked up when I entered. Your men know. They'll believe what I tell them to believe. She shook her head. No. They'll believe what they want. And right now, they want to survive. I hated that she was right. Empires don't fall in battles. They fall in conversations whispered too quietly to hear. You said your father was my enemy, I said. What does he want now? Her voice trembled. He wants what he always wanted. Control. The throne you took from him. But this time, he wants it through blood. Through your blood, I smiled, slow, dark. Then he's about to remember who he declared war on. Hours later, Enzo returned with a file, black seal, unmarked envelope. Intel on our father, he said, setting it down. Giovanni D'Amato built his network in Prague after your war with him. Half the Eastern European trade runs under his flag now. He's untouchable, unless you hit him where it hurts. And where's that? Enzo's eyes flicked to Arya. Her, I understood before he said it. Giovanni had sent men to my compound not just to retrieve her, but to test my response. To see how deep my weakness ran. He wanted proof that his daughter could break me. That night, I sat in the dark, watching Arya sleep, her breathing soft, steady, completely unaware of the war her name had just reignited. I thought about Luca, about how much of me was already written in his blood, whether I wanted it or not. And I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't just revenge. This was legacy. If Giovanni wanted to use family as a weapon, then so would I. I made the call before sunrise. Every man still loyal to me would gather at the old harbor by midnight. No names, no insignia. Just firepower and purpose. When I hung up, Arya was standing in the doorway, eyes heavy with sleeplessness. You're going after him, she said. Yes, you'll die, maybe, but so will he. She crossed the room, tears tracing silent lines down her cheeks. You don't understand. My father doesn't lose. He learns. He's waited years for this moment. Then he's been waiting to die for years, I said coldly. But before I could turn away, she grabbed my hand. Her voice cracked. If you kill him, you kill me too. For a second I froze. Her hand in mine, her heart breaking in her eyes, and behind all of it, the ghost of Elena, whispering the same truth she died trying to teach me. Love is the only bullet that doesn't miss. I pulled my hand free, the mask sealing back into place. Then pray I miss. As I walked out, thunder rolled across the hills, not weather, but warning. Because in my world, bloodlines don't unite. They collide, and by dawn tomorrow, one of us would no longer exist. The night smelled like rain and gasoline. It always does before blood is spilled. The harbor was a graveyard of ships, rusted skeletons creaking in the wind, chains clanging against forgotten steel. My men gathered there, shadows among shadows, their faces half lit by the dull glow of lanterns. It felt like the old days, before love, before truth, before weakness. Enzo stood beside me, loading rounds into his rifle. We're outnumbered, he said. We always are, I replied. He smirked. Never stopped us before. The plan was simple, or maybe just suicidal. Giovanni D'Amato's convoy would be crossing through the northern docks at midnight, hidden under an import shipment. I had one chance to cut the head off the serpent before he struck first. But under all the strategy, all the orders, one thought wouldn't leave my head. Arya's father, the man I was about to kill, had created her, and the woman I loved was praying I wouldn't. Midnight, engines roared to life. The convoy appeared, 4 armored trucks, 2 escort cars, a wall of black steel slicing through the mist, the kind of precision only a D'Amato operation could afford. I raised my hand. The signal, the harbor erupted. Gunfire cracked through the air like thunder tearing the sky apart. Men shouted. Tires screamed. Bullets chewed through the night. Enzo's voice over the radio. Left flank secure. Push forward! I moved through the chaos like a ghost. Each step a promise. Each kill another heartbeat closer to Giovanni. I'd fought wars before, but never for something so painfully personal. When the last truck skidded to a halt, I saw him, Giovanni himself, stepping out with the calm of a man who'd already calculated every possible outcome. Silver hair, tailored coat, and eyes too cold to be human. Moretti, he said, his voice smooth as glass. Still alive. I suppose I should have expected that. Not for much longer, I said, raising my gun. He smiled faintly. You have my daughter, don't you? I hope she's taught you something about regret. I fired, but he was faster. Not in movement, but in manipulation. A figure stepped between us. Arya, stop! She screamed. For 1 second, the world froze. Rain, smoke, fire, all of it blurred behind her silhouette, standing between 2 empires, both with their guns drawn. What the hell are you doing here? I shouted. She followed one of the trucks. Enzo yelled from behind cover. She's been here the whole time. Put the gun down, Moretti, Giovanni said. If you love her, you'll listen. Love. That word again. It sounded like poison in his mouth. Arya turned to me, tears mixing with rain. If you shoot him, you'll become him. Her voice trembled, but her eyes never left mine. You wanted to protect your son, then protect the part of yourself that he might still believe in. Giovanni smirked. You see? Even she knows what you are. The rage in me ignited. Not the kind that burns outward, but the kind that eats you from the inside. I aimed again, this time not at his head, but at his legacy. The fuel truck behind him. One shot, then another. The explosion tore the harbor open, fire swallowing metal, screams echoing against the waves. Giovanni's body vanished into the inferno. Aria screamed my name, running toward me as debris fell around us. Enzo pulled her back. "We have to go." I didn't move. My ears rang with silence. My vision blurred. And in that chaos, I realized what I'd done. I hadn't just destroyed an empire. I'd destroyed hers. Hours later, as we fled through the burning docks, she sat beside me in the car, her hands shaking, her face streaked with ash and tears. She didn't look at me. Not once. But her silence said everything. "You saved me. You killed him. And I'll never forgive you for either." The city didn't sleep that night. It burned in silence, the kind that comes after too much screaming. We drove until dawn, the road unspooling like a scar through the hills. The SUV reeked of smoke and gunpowder. Our hands, of everything we couldn't wash off. Enzo kept the wheel steady. Aria sat in the back seat, turned toward the window, her reflection a ghost beside mine. No one spoke. There are no words for the space between vengeance and regret. Only breathing. Only the weight of what's gone. The villa was gone, the compound reduced to cinders. So we hid in an old hunting lodge north of the city. Stone walls, no electricity. Just the rain tapping on the roof like a clock counting down the hours until forgiveness. Enzo secured the perimeter, then left us. Maybe he understood that some wars don't need soldiers. They need silence. Aria stood in the doorway, watching the light fade across the trees. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. "You didn't have to kill him. I took off my coat, blood stiff on the fabric. He would have killed me. Or you," she turned. "Then let him. At least then it wouldn't feel like this." "Like what?" "Like I lost both of you." Her words hung there, gentle, final. The kind that doesn't demand an answer, only acknowledgement. I sat down, poured 2 glasses of whiskey. My hands shook. Not from fear. From everything else. She didn't take the drink. She just stared at me. The man who'd once promised her safety and delivered only ruins. "Aria," I said finally, "your father made his choice." "So did I. And now?" she asked. "What choice do you make when there's no one left to fight?" I looked at her, at the raw edge in her eyes, at the trembling that wasn't weakness but grief trying to find its shape. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe I stop fighting. For how long? Until the ghosts stop answering when I speak their names." She laughed, small, broken. "That day will never come, Moretti." I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to believe there was still a version of me that could crawl out of this fire and walk towards something cleaner. But the truth sat too heavy in my chest. Monsters don't get redemption. They get memory. Hours passed. Rain turned to mist. The whiskey turned to nothing. She sat on the floor by the hearth, knees pulled to her chest. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Which part?" "All of it." I thought about Elena, about Luca, about the moment Aria stepped between me and death. "Every day," I said. "But regret doesn't bring back the dead. It only keeps them close enough to haunt you." She closed her eyes. "Then let them haunt you. Maybe they'll remind you how to feel." Her head leaned back against the wall, and in that half-light she looked fragile, human, the opposite of everything I'd built myself to be. I moved closer, slow, uncertain. My hand brushed hers, a question without words. She didn't pull away. For a second it felt almost quiet enough to believe in peace. Then thunder rolled somewhere in the distance, soft, but promising. Enzo's voice came from outside. "Boss, we've got movement on the southern road." I stood. Aria's eyes met mine. Fear, resignation, something deeper. "Not again," she whispered. I chambered around, the sound slicing through the silence. "It's never over," I said. As I stepped into the rain, the lodge behind me glowed faintly in the lightning. The night smelled of ash again, of endings that refused to stay buried. And somewhere out there, in the black between trees, I could feel the next war waiting, patient as truth. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the air still felt heavy, the kind of stillness that hides a storm behind it. I hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the fire, Giovanni's face disappearing into the blast, Aria's scream echoing in my head like a curse I'd earned long before that night. Enzo stood by the window, binoculars in hand, his voice low. "They're back, boss, black sedans." "D'Amato Insignia, same convoy style," I frowned. "That's impossible. Giovanni's gone." "Maybe the ghost wears a different face now," Enzo muttered. Aria stepped into the room, hair tied back, eyes hollow from no sleep. "His men won't stop," she said quietly. "You killed the king, but the kingdom doesn't die that easily." She was right. Power never dies. It just changes its voice. The cars stopped a mile from the lodge. No gunfire, no movement. Just headlights cutting through the fog like eyes that refused to blink. Enzo turned to me. "Orders?" "Wait," I said. "They're not here to kill us." "Not yet." I walked outside, hand on my gun, heart on something far more dangerous. Hope. A figure stepped out from the first car, umbrella in hand, suit immaculate despite the mud. "Salvatore Moretti," he called. The voice was calm. educated, confident. He wasn't one of Giovanni's soldiers. He was something worse, the kind of man who never needs to raise his voice to make the world listen. "My name is Raphael D'Amato," he said. Giovanni's brother, so the bloodline hadn't ended. It had only gone quiet long enough to breathe. Inside the lodge, Arya froze when she heard his name. "Raphael?" she whispered. He's worse than father. He doesn't want revenge. He wants ownership." Raphael smiled faintly. "I'm not here for revenge," he said, as if reading her. "I'm here for her." My gun lifted on instinct. "You're not taking her." He tilted his head. "You think you saved her, Moretti? You think she belongs to you because you killed the man who raised her? She belongs to the D'Amatos. By blood, by debt, by legacy." Arya stepped forward, trembling. "I'm not your legacy." He looked at her the way a wolf looks at a wounded lamb. Curious, but certain. "You don't get to choose your blood, Arya, only what you do with it. And I'm offering you a future, one your savior can't give." The way he said it, savior, made it sound like filth. I moved closer. "You think I'll let you walk out of here with her?" He smiled. "You won't have to. She'll come on her own." Silence. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath. Arya's eyes met mine, filled with tears, fear, and something I couldn't read anymore. "If I don't go, he'll kill everyone you still have left," she whispered. "Enzo, Luca, everyone." "Arya," she shook her head, voice breaking. "Maybe this is how it ends, Salvatore. Maybe this is how we stop the fire." And before I could move, she turned, walked toward Raphael, the rain starting again, soft but endless. He opened the car door for her, and she didn't look back, not once. When the engines faded into the distance, the silence came back, the kind that hurts. Enzo stood behind me, jaw tight. "Boss, what now?" I holstered my gun. My voice came out rough, empty. "Now? We bring her home. Because if the D'Amatos wanted to use her blood, they'd have to spill mine first. And for the first time in years, I didn't care if that meant the end of everything. I'd fought for money, for territory, for vengeance. But this time, I was fighting for something I'd already lost. 3 nights after Arya left, the city began whispering again, the kind of whispers that travel through bullet holes and backroom deals. Raphael D'Amato was building an empire out of ashes. And in the center of it, Arya Enzo laid the blueprints across the table, a glass fortress on the edge of the docks, D'Amato's new headquarters, cameras, guards, electric fences. It was less a building and more a monument to arrogance. He looked at me. "Boss, this isn't a rescue. It's suicide." I lit a cigarette. "Then let's die with good aim." He didn't argue. Loyalty isn't blind. It's just tired of running. By midnight, we were inside the city again. The neon lights looked colder this time, like the world had finally realized who it was shining for. We drove through the back alleys, past the same streets where I once promised Arya we'd leave all this behind. Every promise is just a loaded gun pointed at tomorrow. At the gate, Enzo cut the power. The compound fell into darkness. We moved like shadows. Silencers coughed. Bodies dropped. No names. No mercy. Inside, the corridors gleamed with sterile light. White marble, gold trim. It didn't smell like crime anymore. It smelled like money trying to pretend it was clean. And then I saw her. Through the glass balcony. Arya, standing beside Raphael. Her hair pinned, her face pale. A prisoner dressed like royalty. "Welcome back, Moretti," Raphael said, turning slowly. I was wondering when the dog would come for his leash. I stepped forward. "Where is she in all this, Raphael? A trophy? A weapon?" He smiled. "A reminder. You killed Giovanni for love." "I'll destroy you for principle," Arya whispered. "Salvatore, please." But I was already moving. The guards rushed in. Enzo opened fire. Glass shattered. Alarms screamed. I fought through them. Not with precision. Not with control. But with the raw instinct of a man who's already buried his soul. By the time I reached Raphael, the room was smoke and blood. He raised his pistol. I raised mine. We fired together. He fell first. So did I. Arya's scream cut through everything. She knelt beside me, hands trembling as she pressed against the wound. "Stay with me, please." I smiled, weak, tired. "I told you I'd bring you home. You can't die," she said. "Not now, not after all of this." Maybe this is the only way I ever stop killing the things I love. Tears fell on my face. Warm, salt, real. "I hate you for what you did," she whispered. "But I still—" Her voice broke. She didn't have to finish. The words lived in her eyes. Enzo's silhouette appeared through the smoke, dragging her up. "We have to go, Arya. The place is going to blow." She looked down at me one last time. "Don't follow me again," she said softly. Then she left, running through fire and rain, the way every beautiful thing eventually runs from its destroyer. I closed my eyes. The alarms faded. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, city heartbeat, relentless. I thought about the baby photo still folded in my coat pocket. The one that started all this? The one that made a monster believe he could be human again. Maybe redemption doesn't come from saving someone. Maybe it comes from letting them walk away. They say when you die, your life flashes before your eyes. They're wrong. It doesn't flash. It whispers. You don't see moments. You hear them. Her laughter. The sound of her voice saying your name like it meant something. The silence that came after. That's what I hear now. The soft hum of the machines. The steady drip of an IV. Somewhere, a nurse walking past my door. I'm alive, for now, barely. Enzo said I was out for 3 days. Said he dragged me out before the building fell. Said the D'Amatos are done. But I know better. Men like us don't end. We just fade into other names, other sins. He left an hour ago. I told him to disappear, take what's left of our money, build a life without blood on the floor. He didn't argue. Maybe he's tired too. Now it's just me. And the ghost of the woman I can't stop seeing, even with my eyes closed. There's a small photo on the bedside table, the same one that started everything. The baby picture I found in her pocket. The reason I ever looked twice at a girl too quiet for the world she worked in. It's wrinkled now, burned on the edges, but still clear enough to remind me why I tried to change. And failed. Because monsters don't change. They just learn to bleed slower. The doctor said I'll walk again. Said I'm lucky. But luck's a cruel word. It keeps the dead awake. I keep wondering where she is. Arya, if she's somewhere far away, safe, clean, free, or if she's still running from ghosts that wear my face, I hope she found peace, even if I never will. Sometimes in the quiet I hear her whisper, "Don't follow me again," and I realize she didn't mean it out of anger. She meant it because she knew I would. Because love in our world isn't wings. It's a chain, beautiful, heavy, and inescapable. The rain starts again outside. Same rhythm as the night she fainted in front of me. The beginning of everything, and maybe, somehow, the end. I think about all the choices, the killings, the deals, the betrayals, and how every road led to her. How every bullet had her name carved into the silence between heartbeats. And I finally understand something. I never wanted an empire. I wanted a reason to stop building one. If I die tonight, no one will mourn me. And maybe that's fair. But if she ever sees the headlines, Mafia boss dies after D'Amato war, I hope she reads between the lines. I hope she knows it wasn't the gunfire that killed me. It was love. The kind that doesn't end when the heart does. The kind that burns so quietly it turns into light before anyone notices. The machines beep slower now. The window glows faint with morning. And for the first time in years, I don't feel hunted. The world can keep its power. Its blood. Its ghosts. I'm done fighting. I'm done running. Somewhere out there, she's breathing the same dawn. And that's enough. Because if she's alive, then the fire was worth it. She fainted in front of me once, but I'm the one who never truly woke up. He burned his world to save her, and when the fire died, all that was left was love. If this story moved you, subscribe, share it, and stay for what's next. Because every ending is just another beginning. Subscribe for part 2 and new story every week.